Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. I just want to take a few moments and share some reflections on transiting Saturn in Aquarius, which is basically within orb at the moment to forming a square to the transiting nodes that have recently ingressed into Scorpio and Taurus. So this journey is quite a significant journey for the whole human race, really, and for all of us individually, of course. We'll see this pattern of Saturn squaring the nodes essentially building up from now, as in around 10th of February. And, even by the end of the year, we will also see that Saturn will still be within range towards being squared with the nodes. There's some charts that I want to show you, and they are different charts from different parts of history that will also just bring up the archetypes of Saturn and Uranus and the aspects between them, and just historical events that have occurred, because the Saturn-Uranus square is still in play, very much so, all throughout of 2022. First of all, I guess the thing to consider really for yourself is, where is transiting Saturn in Aquarius relative to your own birth chart? So where is Aquarius located in your own chart? And then, of course, where are those transiting nodes in Taurus and Scorpio moving in your chart as well? The nodes that I'm referring to are the moon's nodes, which most of you would be aware. And as you all know, we have the position of the nodes in a very specific location when we were born. So I'm just trying to explain that we have a couple of different layers going on here. We have our own nodal position of the nodes in our own birth chart, and that is an evolutionary process and development relative to those nodes that we were born into. And then, of course, the layers that come on top of that are the transiting nodes through the course of our life. So those nodes that you were born into obviously continue to move as everything else does in the chart. So we have this imprint, if you like, from the point of view of what the soul decided to be born into in that moment in time. And then we have the subsequent layers of the movement of planets and nodes and things like that. So the transiting nodes at the moment are also extremely relevant to our own growth, development, evolution, and consciousness, the decisions we make, the choices we make, how we are growing, where we are stuck, and so forth. The nodes are a very just a really potent component of our growth and development. They are not easy to navigate. Sometimes the nodes can be oversimplified, where you might read or hear that the South Node is the past and the North Node is the future. The North Node is more of a benefic point and has more positive or promising attributes. It has links to associations and connections we make with places and people, and all of that is true. And the South Node corresponds to what is familiar, what is known, what is habitual, what we developed and experienced previously, as in past lives. So it's a component of our psyche, if you like, of our unconscious components, actually, that we are completely familiar with and have a tendency to continue with those ideas, habits, just things that we understand or know or are used to, all our habitual sort of makeup derives really from the south node. And the same could be said for the transiting south and north nodes as well. So we are always on this infinite and continuum path of growth, right? And so I guess the proof in that is that nothing stands still. And the most obvious from an astronomical perspective at least, is that from the time you were born, and we establish a birth chart, right? Something called your astrological birth chart. That's literally, a snapshot, right, of freezing everything in that moment of time, but nothing actually really has frozen. Nothing has stopped. I apologize for the noise. There's a lot of traffic at this time of the day, so hopefully you can still hear me clearly enough. So the matter with regards to the transiting nodes at the moment, I guess the first thing that I'd like to point out, and I'll just start by sharing my screen now. So here's the thing to really consider. If you look at this chart here, which is 4th of July 2019, and just cast your eyes on Saturn and the south node. So let me just bring where is my, why am I not, there we go, sorry about that. Saturn south node at 17 degrees of Capricorn, 36 minutes. As you can see, I've aligned them to when they were exact. So this is a conjunction between Saturn and the south node that occurred in Capricorn. And later that the following year, we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. We know just how significant that has been. We also have the matter of Pluto ingressing into Capricorn in 2008. So these are all layers of things that are just unfolding, have been unfolding, and are continuing to unfold. But from the point of view of at the moment where Saturn has come to a position to square the nodes, which I'll bring up that chart in a moment, what we first need to consider is, well, relative to Saturn and the nodes, where did they start their journey? And where they started their journey was right here in July of 2019. So a conjunction is always reflective of a new cycle, new beginnings, planting seeds, new chapter, new journey, and so forth. It's also a really unknown territory, because it's literally like planting the seed in the pot plant. You don't know what's going to grow from that necessarily, right? It's dark and moist and it's full of promise and potential, but we don't know what that seed is going to look like as it flourishes and grows. And so relative to that, if we keep that in our mind, then the next thing that we need to consider is, well, fast forward to the present. So this is the present chart for today. You can see that transiting Saturn, which is here at 16 degrees of Aquarius, is now forming a square to the transiting nodes, which have recently ingressed into Scorpio and Taurus. And as we progress forward in time throughout the rest of this year, because the nodes move backwards in the zodiac, what will happen is the alignment will become closer and closer and closer between Saturn and the nodes, right? So by April 11th, is when Saturn is exactly squaring those nodes. Now, this is called, relative to where this conjunction to the south node at least began, this would be considered a first quarter square. And the first quarter square is coined by Dane Rudyard as the signature of crisis in action. We can see crisis in action all around us, right? And even though this pattern with Saturn and the nodes has really only just begun, it's kind of letting us know that, you know, there's much more crisis in action to occur for the remainder of 2022, which I always suspected anyway, prior to even looking at this, for instance. So if we think about Saturn, it is also still squaring Uranus. Okay, the aspect between Saturn and Uranus was potent, and its exactness was last year in 2021, where it had a triple transit, right? The last one being in late December of 2021. And even though the aspect is now separating and has been separating since December of 2021, the energy is still there. A separating aspect, meaning two planets are moving further and further apart. They've come to the point where they've made their exact contact, in this case a square, and one planet is obviously going to in this case Saturn is the faster moving planet, so it's the first one to move away, right, from Uranus. And you can see that by looking at the degrees. So Saturn is 16, Uranus is 11. Uranus moves much slower than Saturn. Saturn has a 29 year orbit, and Uranus has an 84-year orbit. So clearly Saturn is the faster moving body, and so it is moving away from Uranus. But even though it is a separating aspect and moving away from Uranus, when you look at the year of 2022, it's still within enough of an orb or a range or a portal or a frequency or a width or a band or whatever word you want to use. It's still within range of actually being in contact with Uranus. And so this is why we are still experiencing the dynamic, conflicting energy of Saturn and Uranus, which is speaking through the revolutions that are taking place collectively, and the voice for freedom, sovereignty, authenticity versus the establishment coming through in a consensus construct, a consensus perspective, through suppression, judgment, restriction, liberties being taken away, and so forth. And there's this, huge dynamic energy between the two that's creating the conflict, obviously. And I really like this line that I read, and I just want to read it to you. And this is relative to a description of the Saturn-Uranus frequency. There are many things we can say about Saturn-Uranus, but I really love this line. So let me just find it. The consequences of unchecked experimentation or hubris, the negative sides of modern science and technology. Science without conscience is the ruin of the soul. So when I read that, it literally just went straight into my soul. When I read that, I thought, wow, what a what a fantastic way to kind of really describe what's going on at the moment, right? Rudolf Steiner spoke about what's going on at the moment, many years ago. he was definitely a clairvoyant soul, had visions that were just, way beyond his time and that time in history. So, we have this level of apparent science that's attempting to lead the narrative, which seems to consistently have a lot of holes in it, right? Because it keeps falling apart, it keeps changing, there's no consistency. There's tremendous force, all those things that are going on. So the other thing that before I just give some considerations about what does it mean to have Saturn squaring the nodes for all of us this year, I just also want to show you from the point of view of Saturn Uranus energies and historical events that have occurred. There's loads of them, really. I mean, I'd need hours to cover it, but I just couldn't help remembering this particular one here, which was the fall of the Berlin Wall. And as you can see, there is a Saturn Uranus conjunction here in the sign of Capricorn, which is really quite what's the word? It's beyond interesting. It's funny, it's interesting, it's literal, because Saturn and Capricorn rule walls, and Uranus rules the breaking down of any wall or system. So the Berlin Wall coming down corresponds to the Uranus Saturn energy. So I just remembered that today because I had that in my mind for many, many years. And I just thought, well, let me just have a quick look at that chart again. So there's that. And also the conjunction of Saturn Uranus actually began here in October of 1988. All right. So they came together in this conjunction in the sign of Sagittarius. Okay, so that's a new phase conjunction. When we're talking about a conjunction, which simply means two planets aligning side by side, in the same degree and same minute, a new phase conjunction, that is, they have to be at the same degree and same minute, even though I don't have that here, but they did come to that point in the same minutes as well. Again, a new phase conjunction is a new phase. It's a whole new phase and chapter that's going to be characterized by the archetypes in question, in this case, Uranus and Saturn. So they start off their conjunction at virtually the end of Sagittarius, and the subsequent year in 1989, when they again formed a conjunction in Capricorn, that's when the Berlin Wall came down. So I think that's just an interesting thing to remember. I mean, there's so many things historically that occurred with this, the relationship between Uranus and Saturn, because as we proceed forward and the subsequent year they make the conjunction in Capricorn, well, that was in 1989. So from 1989 till now, they've had a series of aspects, if you like, from that point until where we are now. And let me just see. So the cycle of Uranus and Saturn forming this conjunction in 1988 actually concludes 2032, when they will both be in the sign of Gemini and they will form a new conjunction phase. So it's a very long cycle if you think about it. From 1988 to 2032, we have been collectively working with this energy of Saturn Uranus, and it's essentially the establishment versus the people and humanity and truth and authenticity and freedom and the future and visions and individuation and things of that nature. And this is not to bash Saturn, because Saturn is such an important archetype in our experience of life. It speaks to the conscious construct that we create and perceive, and it has a very healthy and necessary function on that level, and the corresponding rules that society establishes from the point of view of Saturn. Very simple example, rules that pertain to not driving through a red light, for instance. Just rules that are just, created from society for the purposes of some functioning structure that enables us to have, a level of things playing out and contributing to healthy levels of structure that are necessary in order to help us function more productively, let's say, right? So there's that, and there's also just our own conscious structure of reality and how we develop and grow through that lens of Saturn. So Saturn is, absolutely crucial and fundamental in every sense, really. And then, of course, if you go into the deeper teachings, esoterically and otherwise, Saturn, as I've said before, is the magician. So the Saturn that is difficult, which seems to be projected, on the consensus reality, in such a big way, is that part of Saturn that we could say we have not integrated within ourselves. And that's not something that people think about, stop to think about, or even understand, right? Not all people, of course, but I'm just talking about the general sort of construct of the consensus reality. So the key with Saturn, and I've said this many times in many videos, is always the journey and process of integration and alignment. In other words, to become your own authority. So integrating that Saturn within us, because once we've integrated something, there is no need to project it and experience it outside of ourselves. I mean, the concept of projection is simply, it's a complicated theory or teaching or whatever word you want to use, but very simply put, it really just describes being out of touch with a component of our own psyche or psychic structure or understanding or understanding, wisdom, and so forth. And the only way we can really experience that part of our psyche is to see it outside of ourselves. And through seeing it outside of ourselves, we then have the opportunity, you could say, to really understand that, this is really just my own projection. And that takes, a lot of wisdom and soul searching and deep reflection, integration and alignment to even arrive at that level of insight and understanding, because it's not just an idea. If it was just an idea, then we'd all have it. We'd all be at that level of integration and alignment. It's not an idea. It's really, truly an integration and alignment. And the alignment really is between the soul and the personality, because typically the majority, or I don't know if it's the majority, but let's just say it is the majority of people, tend to not have the soul integrated with the personality, and so the personality tends to take over, which is largely connected to this experience of reality and life through projection, right? And so seeing everything out there as though it's happening out there, when in fact it's happening in the layers of our own psychic construct and soul and so forth. So moving away from this chart, let me see. So think about that. The cycle of Saturn Uranus began in 1988, completes at 2032, which is a really profound year, even from the point of view of the Venus star points as well, because if we just go to that for a moment, let's see. So where are we? That's quite interesting. So there's a new phase conjunction beginning between Uranus and Saturn in 2032, and there we have a Gemini Venus star point, an evening star. So that's quite interesting. That's very powerful, actually. But that's not what I wanted to go to. What I was wanting to go to was, let me see. The Venus star point ingressing into Libra, right, coming out of Scorpio into Libra. That's October this year. I will be coming back to talk about that with Ariel and perhaps with others as well. I'll see. But perhaps if I do it this way. No. Oh. So in 2026, we go back into Scorpio ever so briefly. So we have this, beautiful portal entry of a Venus star point, new cycle beginning, which is going to be there for 100 years or so. So it's a big deal. But before she really proceeds her journey into Libra, she goes back into Scorpio in 2026 to just kind of help us complete a few things there, I guess. And then there's something that I'm just missing here. I just can't seem to... there it is. So 2023, 33 rather. Okay, there's something I'm missing there. I just can't quite remember what I had in mind. So I'll just leave that for now. Now, going back to these charts. Okay, so we've looked at, the Berlin Wall. We've talked about the Saturn-Uranus conjunction beginning in 1988 in Sagittarius, and that cycle actually completing in 2032. And let's come back to the present moment with Saturn squaring the nodes. So I'm going to actually come back and do a whole session just on the transiting nodes in Scorpio and Taurus, because that needs to be unpacked and explored at quite a deep level, just from the point of view of the archetypes, Taurus and Scorpio transiting, the nodes transiting those signs, but just very briefly to consider at the moment the journey of Saturn having this very powerful interaction with the nodes. It's because it's a square aspect, and because it's the first quarter square relative to Saturn, starting with the conjunction to the South Node in 2019, and now this is really a first quarter square, if you like. which is crisis in action, it is a very critical time relative to literally crisis in action, obviously, right? So we have that level, which I briefly mentioned before. The other thing to consider is that these are all fixed signs, okay? Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus are the three fixed signs out of the four fixed signs. The other one is Leo, okay, which is not emphasized in this pattern, and it doesn't need to be. It's enough to have Saturn squaring the nodes. And when we have planets squaring the nodes, it is such a potent and dynamic portal of energy pointing to a really critical point in our evolution that comes through very dynamic circumstances, sometimes cataclysmic events. It's not a walk in the park. We're not just flowing and cruising through this nodal axis with Saturn. We are being, severely tested and challenged with our perspective, Saturn, on reality, right? And our sort of habitual patterns and thoughts of behaviors, beliefs, ideas, and so forth, and how we are integrating relative to moving into the future with the North Node in Taurus. Now, fixed signs are very very challenging from the point of view of, at worst, the nature of fixed signs is what can contribute to potentially keeping us very stuck. At worst, fixed signs are completely immovable. You just cannot move them. The most fixed being, of course, Taurus out of the four, and the North Node is, leading the way, if you like, in Taurus. So it's an interesting dynamic. The fixed nature of these signs, as I said, at worst can keep us stuck, but at best, it can also enable us to have the staying power and persistence that we need to work through and move through and push through the very difficult nature of events and reality before us, our participation in that, our perspective in that, our decision and choice in all of that, how and what we decide from the point of view of our future moving forward. And the Saturn in Aquarius component is actually a real blessing, because even though Saturn has, all those difficult levels to it, which is, speaks to rigidity, restriction, suppression, oppression, all those things, judgment, guilt, it brings up all that sort of stuff. And these are all patterns of our own conditioning that not only come from this life, but many lifetimes. So in Aquarius, Saturn squaring these nodes is also speaking to that position of our own level of self-awareness. Aquarius is the archetype that corresponds to objectivity, right? And being able to step outside ourself, as it were, Leo, and step into the bigger picture, Aquarius, and stand in that field, if you like, with a sense of objectivity and a clearer perspective through the portal of Saturn as well. And with the square to the nodes, because it is a dynamic, tension provoking field, it is stressing that really conflicting time in history and in our life, from the point of view of needing to reconstruct Saturn a new perspective and reality, Saturn, that that actually includes and combines and unites humanity together, Aquarius. There's much more to say about the nodes, in the archetypes of Scorpio and Taurus, as I said, and I'd like to come back and, just do a separate video on that. But really today I just wanted to highlight the energy of Saturn and Uranus, which is still very potent, where it began, where it finishes, where we are at the moment, and also this journey of Saturn squaring the nodes. And, it really kicked off with that new moon in Aquarius that we just had, a week and a half ago, right? A new moon in Aquarius conjunct Saturn. And then as Saturn proceeds forward, it, aligns with this square to the nodes. So the new moon just colors the lunation cycle for the month, which is hugely important because of Saturn's presence, of course, but also just from the level of timing and how things are unfolding, at least for the month of February, let's say, right? So for the rest of the year, Saturn is going to be in this alignment with the nodes. And so these nodes in these archetypes of Scorpio and Saturn, which will be there for about 19 months, and we've only just begun it, we are starting the journey of these nodes with Saturn in the mix, in the picture. Saturn's voice is completely just so significant for how we are going to navigate this nodal axis. And the nodes, as I was saying earlier, are really not easy points to navigate. The South Node is very much, part of our past memories and constructs and conditions. And the North Node is always corresponding to the evolution, the growth, the development, the integration. And again, like I said before, we don't just, wake up one morning and just go, oh yeah, okay, I'm just going to do the North Node. If it was so simple, our life wouldn't be so complex and so conflicting. So it is up to all of us to continuously work with our own shadow, our own soul integration, our own awakening, our own consciousness, continuously checking in with what we are actually staying with, what are we holding on to, that is just really has just been born out of conditions, whether that's relative to society or whether that's relative to the authority figures you grew up with, meaning your parents, because when you're a child they are your authority, right? So layers upon layers upon layers, right? But this is just a real important message through Saturn from the point of view of our evolution into the North Node in Taurus, which well, look, I want to come back and talk about the nodes separately, so that's why I'm sort of holding off on giving more information on the Scorpio Taurus. But yeah, look, that's really all I wanted to point to today. And there was just one other line I wanted to read. Let me just see if I can find it. So when you're thinking about the North Node, the transiting North Node, or even the North Node in your own birth chart, the evolving requires making choices that embrace stepping into an unknown, which is the exact opposite of what is known, meaning the unknown is the North Node and the known is the South Node, right? And so in our growth and development and um, movement forward in life at the moment, we are we, let me just make one thing clear. It's not that we are to dismiss the south node, because we can't, even if we wanted to. And that's not the objective. The objective is to have the insight and understanding of what's been, what's previous, what's familiar, what's known, and how do we journey towards the unknown. Because journeying towards the unknown, basically what it typically does for most of us is bring up uh, incredibly deep insecurities. That's just the nature of the personality, if you like, and even the moon, which brings about a level of security, and as does Saturn for that matter. Saturn brings about the external level of what's what appears as security, and the moon is our inner security, right? Which is that whole Cancer Capricorn polarity. So to work with the south and north nodes, we need to have we need to be able to be really open, okay, and receptive and understanding of that whole polarity. And it's not about blocking one and going to the other, because we can't do that. We, particularly while we are in the human form living in, a world of duality, once we suppress something, it just gets internalized and then projected onto something else anyway. That's why the whole key with our soul's evolution is integration, 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 alignment, alignment, alignment. So when we're working with the nodal axis and Saturn there, it is. I mean, Saturn is the lord of time. He's the lord of karma. He's got a lot of wisdom. He's the teacher. So he is teaching us something very profound in our own journey at the moment, with integrating into the North Node, which is a Venus ruled sign. Venus rules Taurus. And so there is something there very important, speaking to the necessity to reestablish harmony, equilibrium, and balance on the earth plane, Taurus. Taurus rules the earth. Anyway, more about that when I talk about the nodes, but just these are just a few things to consider. And also, let's not forget this lineup that's occurring here between Mars, Venus, Vesta, and at the present moment, Mercury, since it just recently went direct, is now doing his final pass over Pluto. So I expect the next few days to be highly significant, with outcomes in political fields relative to leaders. And I mean collectively. There's certainly massive things going on in Australia politically, and I know there are in so many other countries. I'm going to come back and do a video, probably with Ariel actually, because it involves some Venus star point features about a couple of the politicians here in Melbourne, Australia, and just some of the phenomenal events that have been taking place, particularly over the last 7 days. So there's heaps going on there with all of that, and the whole Mars-Venus conjunction, and this cycle being very significant because it's actually closing off a 7-year cycle, as a matter of fact. So there's lots going on, and I think there always is to some extent, really, right? But I mean, especially at the moment with the nature of reality, the dynamic energy is being pulled and activated in every different direction. And I think our dharma and our karma and our duty, I want to say, which is a good word for Saturn, is to actually align with our own integral and authentic self, if you like. And we the greatest way to do that with Saturn in Aquarius squaring the nodes, we will be confronted with really uncomfortable matters, circumstances, and conditions, because the square is what promotes change. But before it promotes, or before the change is apparent or seen or embodied, it is the conflict that comes through first. That's what a square aspect does. It makes things so damn uncomfortable that we are forced to make the necessary change. And so that's part of this picture here as well. All right, I think that's all I have to say for this at the moment, but I will come back and do quite a deep dive into the north and south nodes of the moon transiting Taurus and Scorpio. And also, before I do that, I will come back to talk about the full moon. As a matter of fact, I just very briefly, what's going to happen in a few days' time when the moon gets into Leo, which I'm going to come back and give a full overview. The full moon is going to occur at about 27 degrees of Leo. And what are the nodes? 27 Taurus Scorpio. So what does that mean? It means that the full moon is exactly square the nodes, right? That's a big deal. That's basically a fixed cross. So this is a huge month from the point of view of new moon, full moon, Saturn, Uranus, Mars, Venus, Vesta, Mercury, Pluto, and the nodes. It's jam-packed. So I expect the rest of this month to be so much more dynamic than it is as we speak right now. I'll be back to talk about that. Okay, thanks for listening, and leave your comments and questions below. Hope you are all doing well. Sending you all much love. And actually, let me just show you something. And this is just a beautiful gift to leave you with. So what I'm about to show you is I filmed Venus, the morning star, which is the Capricorn morning star. She's rising at about 5 a.m. on the eastern horizon. Now I've got some music to this. Actually, the music might make it difficult. I might end up getting a ban from YouTube. Yeah, because it'll come up with copyright for the music. That's a damn shame. I was just going to show you a video that I filmed. Can you see that little dot there? Anyway, it's a shame I can't show you. I wanted to upload it on my channel yesterday, and then again I thought, no, I better not, because I'll get some sort of block or something. Anyway, okay, never mind. She is Venus, that is. Her sparkle, her dazzle, her magnificence, her light, her beauty is just so beyond radiant. It's so beyond magical. I was completely hypnotized when I was watching her. I actually saw her 3 mornings in a row, and I literally just sat there just watching her rising. It literally looked like a kind of like a 6-pointed star, and just dazzling, like the most exquisite diamonds, the most the most beautiful, expensive, exquisite diamond that could ever be found, and that doesn't even come close. Imagine just how beautiful she was. So yeah, see you soon. Much love. Bye for now.